Hey everybody, it's that time again. It's math time, and I'm so glad that you're here with me today because we've got some awesome things planned, and we're talking about a great lesson. And to even get us into that lesson, we've got a little song. Are you ready? Here we go. It's a great morning, and we're learning. Let's talk about measurement. That's right, everybody. We are talking about measurement today, and we're learning about different ways we can measure objects. And when we're talking about measurement, we're thinking about, how long is something, or how wide it might be, how tall something might be. And we want specific ways to be able to talk about those and compare, how tall something might be to something else, right? We want to compare those objects. And that's what measurement is so great to do. It helps us look at those amounts and we can really compare them. And so there's different ways to measure. We've got some specific tools here that I want to show you. One is a tape measure. Now, tape measures are a form of standard units of measurement because you can see on this one, it's in inches. So you have these numbers going across, 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's telling you how many inches something might be, right? And we also have a ruler. A ruler is another way or another tool that we have that kind of uses these standard units of measurement like inches, or another one is called centimeters. So we might look at it in that way, but we can measure different objects to see how long they might be or how tall they are. Now let's do an example. Let's say, hey, I want to know exactly how tall this train whistle is, right? I know that it works, but I want to know exactly how tall it might be. So let's use our tape measure. And if I do that, a couple things that are really important when you measure. We always want to measure from one end all the way to the other end. And we don't want to leave any gaps when we're measuring something. And so a tape measure will do that really well because we can start at one end, go all the way up to the top, and there's no gaps in between. Okay, and as we look, we can see it's right in between the 8 and the 9. So it's about 8.5 inches. And so we know exactly how tall my train whistle is. All right, and so we can measure other things and see, is another object taller? If I measure this ukulele, I bet it would be taller because we can see that, but I want to know exactly how tall it is. I could use that tape measure again. But did you know there's also other ways to measure using non-standard units of measurement? Things like objects, where you think about crayons. How many crayons would it take to stack up to be as tall as I am? Or this ukulele, and we could use something like blocks. So let's do that. You can see I have 4 blocks already stacked here, and so if I set my ukulele next to it, we'll notice that, I need more blocks, right? To get all the way to the top if I'm going to measure this. I want to know exactly how many blocks it's going to take to get to the very top. Well, if I do that, I have to add more on, all right? So notice, remember those 2 things I said were really important, that we were starting at the end, going all the way to the end? Well, I haven't made it to the other end, but they started at the same spot, and there's no gaps in between my blocks. If I move this block and I said, it's about 6 blocks high, that's not true, right? Because look at all that space in between. We don't want any gaps there. So we've got to make sure that they're touching, and then we can build up and see. And so if we go all the way to the top, we're going to see that it's going to take 12 blocks to get to the very top of my ukulele. And now we've seen how we can measure that. And so that's awesome. So we've talked about standard units of measurement, right? Where we were using those tape measure, the rulers, these tools that give us exact measurements. But we also have those non-standard units of measurement. Things like blocks and crayons that we can stack together to make sure we can see how tall something is. Now, I want to throw in a little problem here too, because let's say I know that my ukulele is 12 blocks high, right? It took 12 blocks to get to the top. Well, what if I had 2 ukuleles and they were stacked on top of each other? And I said, how many blocks am I going to need to get to the top of the second ukulele? Well, I know that it's going to take 12 for one, and then it would take another 12 to get to the top of the second one. Well, if I do that, now I can relate my knowledge, what I know about adding things together. So I had 2 ukuleles, so I have to add my 12 blocks for one and another 12 blocks and see how tall it's going to be. And we can do that in a variety of ways. Think about 12. It's made up of a 10 and a 2, right? But I have 2 of those. So that means I have 2 10s, 10, 20, and then the 2 and the 2 makes 4. So 20 and 4 make 24. I would need 24 blocks to get to the top of the second ukulele. Great problem solving today, guys. And before you go, it reminds me of a little rhyme. Are you ready? The amount, width, the length or size when you're measuring, look closely with your eyes. Don't leave gaps and start at the end. When it comes to measurement, you're set up for the win.